Welcome into the Locked On Packers Squad Show. I'm your host. My name is Brandon Sneide. And are the Packers more talented now than they were in Chicago at the end of 2026? I don't know about that, but I do believe they are a better team going into this year.
I'm Peter Bukowski, host of Locked On Packers, and it is time for Brian Gutekunst to get back into wheeling and dealing mode. Let's go.
And I am Jacob Morley from Packer Reports. How many wide receivers is enough for this Green Bay Packers team?
Go Pack Go! It's the Packers Squad. Everything Green Bay Packers every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from Titletown. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. From the frozen tundra with all the cheeseheads, the Packers Squad Show starts now.
You are Locked On Packers, parts of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Follow the podcast over on Twitter at Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get audio podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you find them. You will certainly find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for the fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to each and every single one of you who continues to make Locked On Packers your first listen each and every single day. A lot to get to. Free agency still happening around the NFL. Are there more moves for Brian Gutekunst and the Green Bay Packers to hash out? Is there a trade potentially on the table that Goody can address with an old friend? We'll get into that. Plus, what are some of the biggest roster needs for this team after 1 week of free agency? But I wanted to begin, gentlemen, and Peter, I'm going to start with you. A simple question that might not have a simple answer, or maybe it does. After the Packers lost to the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field to end their season in the wild card round.
I remember. I was there.
I know. We were here after they were up 18 points at halftime. After 1 week of free agency, we have a plethora of people in and out of the roster, right? You look at Quay Walker, Romeo Doubs, Rasheed Walker, Kingsley Enagbare, Colby Wooden, Nate Hobbs, Rashawn Gary, Elton Jenkins, all gone. Insert Sky Moore, Zaire Franklin, Javon Hargrave, Benjamin St. Juice, Sean Ryan also extended at the center position. Peter Bukowski, are the Packers better or worse than they were when they ended the season as it stands right now?
I'm going to cheat. Okay. It's my show, damn it. And I'm going to say the 2026 Packers are more coherent. I think that they make more sense this year than they did last year for a number of reasons. And I want to start in your favorite place, Brandon Sneide. I want to start on the special teams because they made significant, okay? For this Packers team, a punt returner and 2 special teams linebackers is significant investment, okay?
Oh, I was fired up, baby. I was fired up.
So that's the first point. And then the second part of this is, I think, and I've been saying this, and people called me crazy, and they called me a madman, right? But I have been saying for a long time, I think this receiver room needs to be streamlined. And I think Romeo Doubs' departure, while he is a very good player, and I think expecting Matthew Golden to walk right into being as good as Romeo Doubs is a tall order. But I think there is something to everyone understanding their roles and a little less fighting for opportunity that can actually make this team better. And the same is true along the offensive line. Jordan Morgan is not competing with Rasheed Walker. Anthony Belton is not competing with Sean Ryan. Sean Ryan is not competing with Jordan Morgan. Everyone sort of knows where they fit in the pecking order in the defensive line room. Rashawn Gary is not half-assing it anymore. That's the first place. And then, okay, Micah Parsons is your alpha. Lucas Van Ness, you're hoping can become your omega. And then you go from there. And everyone else is really just a piece. And so I think that from a cohesion standpoint, there is something about the way that this roster is constructed that when I look at the 11 and your special teams, I think, frankly, it's not as deep a team. It's not as like, if we added up Madden scores, it's not as talented and like net, but I think it makes more sense this year.
Yeah, it feels like the puzzle pieces are there. You're not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, which the Packers have done quite a bit. Mr. Morley, your thoughts? Yeah, your thoughts, Mr. Morley, on this roster a week into free agency for the Green Bay Packers. No quote unquote splash move, I suppose, for that some fans wanted, but there seems to be a message being sent throughout the building at 1265. Do you think the Packers are better or worse than they were where they ended the season?
Well, to Peter's point, anybody that's ever made a recipe or cooked or baked or done anything, you know there's tweaking that needs to be done. And like you're using, whatever ingredients, some of them are similar to each other, but you might find a certain combination that works better and tweaking it to your taste, right? And I think that's kind of like Peter's point is they've had a lot of talent on this team. They still have talent on this team. Are they as deep? Probably not, but they know who they want in those starting spots. Like they know what flavor they want in those spots. So what's the final product going to look like? I mean, we're going to find out, but to his point, I think that's kind of what we're going to see is these are the guys that they want and not to take anything away from the guys that are gone, but there's no competing. And there is something to be said about going into camp, going into the offseason, knowing like, hey, this is my job. And buddy, I the one thing I do disagree with you on, Peter, is watch Matthew Golden. Watch Matthew Golden.
I'm not saying he can't, Jake. I'm just saying I think it's a tall order to expect that of him. And I think that they have to find a way to make this offense work without saying you need to get 8 targets a game. I
think he's going to do it. And that might be bold, but whatever. But like I believe in the talent there. I think one thing, and again, I love Romeo. I hope nothing but the best for Romeo. I am glad he got paid. But
yeah, man.
I want Jordan Love to have that type of relationship, that type of trust with a Christian Watson, with a Matthew Golden, and watch how the offense looks.
And you know what's so crazy to me? You're so right about the trust thing, and I think that's so vital. Early in the season, didn't it seem like Jordan Love trusted him right away? Like he's out there and right away, like they got to have it against the Bengals to seal that one late. Jordan Love rolls to his left, and Matthew Golden breaks wide open. On fourth, you got to have it. 4th and 10 against the Cowboys.
That is who Matthew Golden is. You go back and watch his Texas tape. You watch his Houston tape. He is a guy that, like, in gotta-have-it moments, teams were not scared to get to him the ball. And he saw it the first year. And I think, like Dusty really, like, pointed out a lot of, like, hey, he doesn't look like he knows what he's doing at times, which is normal. Like, that's people we've gotten so used to rookies coming in and just being, boom, all pro. They get it. That's not normal. Like, especially in Matt LaFleur's offense, it's tough. Like even the guys like Christian Watson, like Romeo Doubs, like those guys struggled as rookies. Like Aaron Rodgers is famous kind of calling out Christian Watson as a rookie, against the LA game with the Baker Mayfield LA team. He said something like, hey, if you want to catch touchdowns, you got to run the right route. And that's just normal in this offense for these young guys. But, and so not to get off on a Matthew Golden tangent, but I am excited to watch what he can do in year 2.
And I was pounding the table all year for him, Jacob.
He finally did it.
And here's the other thing, guys. I went back because I'm a sadist and a masochist. I went back and I have watched more times than I would care to admit. I've watched the last couple drives of the Bears game. And that second to last drive where they're going to what feels like put the dagger in it and McManus misses the field goal. They have a 4th and medium. They call an out to the field to Matthew Golden and convert. On 3rd and 16, Jordan Love took a sack. There was a penalty. Something happened. I can't remember exactly what the circumstances was. Now it kind of all bleeds together. They couldn't block in the second half. But it's 3rd and 16, and they're not in field goal range. And you're like, are they really going to do this? And Jordan Love gets to the line, gives Matthew Golden the dreaded hand signal, and now it's a deep out instead of a quick out. A deep out on 3rd and 16. And they complete it. Matthew Golden was the guy he called that for. Not Romeo Doubs, not Christian Watson, Matthew Golden. And so I hear you. And I think the same can be true for Jordan Morgan. I think the expectation should be that the Packers upgrade with Jordan Morgan at left tackle, given what we saw from Rasheed Walker last year. And I think the expectation should be that Zaire Franklin is an upgrade on Quay Walker from last year. That was the whole point of making the trade, giving up a useful piece of your defensive line rotation to go get Zaire Franklin, because you think he can be an upgrade, certainly for value for money, but I think he can be a straight up better player than Quay Walker. So you go, okay, a lot of snaps out the door. That's true. But like Nate Hobbs got benched. Rashawn Gary got soft benched toward the end of the year.
Carrington Valentine.
So like, look, they brought in players that are going to compete in those spots. And I think you can make the case, Jordan Morgan, Matthew Golden, and Zaire Franklin, of the 3 biggest players they lost, that those guys can be better this year than the outgoing players. The difference is last year, Jordan Morgan and Matthew Golden were on the team. So you can't say net, they're more talented, but the guys in those spots may be better, which is Brandon's point. The team might be better. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll let Brandon cook. Brandon, the question that you asked has a very specific answer, because on the field in Chicago, on the sidelines, not suited up, Tucker Kraft, Zach Tom, Micah Parsons. So next year, at some point, we will see all 3 of those guys. So that's the key to me, is if you have those guys, doesn't everyone on this panel believe they beat Chicago with those 3, like just one of those 3 guys?
I was just going to say, don't you even have to have all 3? Yeah.
And if you have all 3, you feel like you could, and if they had all 3 all season, like maybe that game's at home, there's a lot of different, Alice in Wonderland tunnels we can fall down. But I think that we felt like even with, if they're hurt and they come back for the Bears game, they could have gone to Seattle and won. They could have beat LA in LA. No question. Like that's how good this team is. That's the thing.
And that's the variables of an NFL season, right? Like the question is this team more talented than last year? I know this is what we do. We have to create content. We got to talk about this stuff. Ultimately, the answer is who cares? Because in 2010, when they won a Super Bowl, Aaron Rodgers played on better teams than that did not win a Super Bowl. So Absolutely. Are they better? Are they not? I don't care. Are they going to be better in December and January? Like that's, are they going to be healthy? So like, that's kind of the stuff that we need to get to that point to find out. Do they have enough on this team to win a Super Bowl right now? Yeah, they do.
I've never thought of it that way, Jake, but like Brandon, just blink test. The 2014, the 2020, and the 2021 Packers, better or worse teams than the 2010 team?
Better.
See?
And that's a great point. Yeah. And Jake or Peter, you remember a couple of weeks ago when I said which Packer needs to step up the most going into this season and who needs to elevate their game? It was, for my answer, was Jordan Love, because we've seen Aaron Rodgers do that, to Jacob's point, on that Super Bowl team. Like he was on a different level, maybe not in the NFC Championship game against the Chicago Bears, but in the divisional round, like that was historic. The Super Bowl, great performance. Like that's what we need to see.
The divisional round is still to this day the best I've ever seen a quarterback play in a football game. It was unbelievable watching him tear Atlanta apart.
That's my and it wasn't a knock on Jordan Love. I wasn't calling out Jordan Love. I love Jordan.
I can't believe you called out Jordan Love.
I know. I did get cooked in the comments, by the way. But where do you like? We can agree that special teams overall is probably the most improved, right, through the offseason. I think most of us would agree with that. When you get Sky Moore or St. Juice is going to get special teams reps, you bring back Welch and Neiman. What unit do you think?
And Rich Bisaccia can't hurt us anymore, Brandon.
Yeah. Where do you think a unit got worse during the free agency period since the season ended to where we are now? Is there a unit where you guys are looking at and you're like, man, I don't really know if that got better? It may not have gotten worse, but it's still probably something I'm going to circle going into the draft, and then I'm going to be paying attention to in rookie mini camps and potentially in the early start of training camp. Peter, I'll let you go first.
The defensive line is the obvious answer. Like I think Javon Hargrave can be an upgrade over what they had at the defensive line. But I think not just Rashawn Gary, Kingsley Enagbare is a low-key important piece for the Packers. And they like the stop that he made on what was it, 3rd and short, that sets up the 4th down where they throw the ball and Caleb Williams throws the interception. That was Kingsley Enagbare. And I just think he was such a valuable player as a rotation piece. And when they soft benched Rashawn Gary, it was for Enagbare. And so that, to me, they need some depth on the edge. I like Barron Sorrell. I know that's your guy, Brandon. I think Colin Oliver has got a lot of talent, but like those guys are not that much more experienced than you or I as NFL players. And that's the scary piece. Like if Micah Parsons is not ready for the first month of the season, they're going to be starting Lucas Van Ness and Barron Sorrell on the edge. Like that's just not good enough unless Javon Hargrave turns back the clock.
Jacob, you agree? Defensive line? Because I push back on that a little bit, because I think if you look at it, Rashawn Gary tallied as much stats as us 3 combined did in the last half of the year. You obviously traded away Colby Wooden. And you inserted Javon Hargrave, who, had his best years under Jonathan Gannon as his defensive coordinator there in Philly. So I look at it a 1-for-1 swap. I see the bigger picture, Peter, when you bring up Rashawn Gary versus who you're going to have, but give me the effort and the energy you had from Barron Sorrell than what we saw from Rashawn Gary. And when you take out Colby Wooden and you insert Javon Hargrave, I don't think that unit got necessarily worse. You can make the argument, maybe it didn't get totally better. I think it got better, but not a ton better. But Jacob, where do you stand on either the defensive line or another unit you're kind of paying attention to as something that needs to be improved going into week 2 and beyond of this free agency?
I mean, I think the offensive side of the ball, the two guys that we brought up are Morgan and Golden. And I think both those guys will be better than the guys that were in front of them. So I think that unit potentially got better. The defense for sure. Like, I think you got to look at that and say, like, they did have talent that left. When the Packers made the Zaire Franklin trade, I had our pal Zach Hicks on. He's in my DM saying, who is Enigbare? This guy is good.
He was watching watching tape. Yeah.
And so it's like, he's a good player. Like, he's a very underrated guy. It's someone that they will need to replace. Like, not a make or break. Like, you're not going to win a Super Bowl or lose a Super Bowl probably because Kingsley Enigbare is not on your team, but someone needs to take those reps and play them to the quality that he did. The other thing with Hargrave, I don't think he's a 1-for-1 swap with Wooden. I think he's more of a Devontae Wyatt rotational piece. Like, they're very similar players where, Wyatt is, he's a kind of a one gap type guy that can play up the field and get after the quarterback and do that. Maybe not the best run defender. Like, that's Hargrave. And so are they just insulating that part of the room where Wyatt has not been able to really stay healthy in his time? So that's a question I think needs to be answered. So I do think it's the defensive side of the ball in general. And the biggest question for me with the defensive side of the ball is Jonathan Gannon going to be as good as Jeff Hafley? I think we're kind of just assuming yes, because he is. I mean, I think he's had success in this league and has done well, but you got to go do it, man. And so that's the thing. I think Jeff Hafley is a hell of a coach, and that's why he's the head coach in Miami right now. So,
but don't you put anything on that Jonathan Gannon's done it? Like, he's already proven that. To your question, he's already proven to do that.
He's been a Super Bowl
team coordinator. He was 2 years in Philadelphia, which. Can't take that away. Very good 2 years.
And then after he left, they completely fell apart and they had to go out.
Trying to run the same system they created with I think better players, with Jalen Carter on that team.
Still got to do it. I think he will, but it's like bringing a free agent in. You're in a different place. You're a different spot. Go show that you can do it. I think he will, but like, what's that look like? It's a different scheme. Or there's guys that have looked better. There's guys that look better in Joe Barry's scheme than Jeff Hafley. So, like, which guys are going to rise to the top and which guys – right. Or Rashawn Gary's the biggest example, like to a smaller – like Carl Brooks to a much lesser degree. Look much better under Joe Barry.
For Joe Barry.
But so, like, what's that going to look like? What guys are going to be really good? What guys are going to look like they don't fit in the scheme? And I think the secondary still scares me, especially with Micah Parsons. Like, if he can't come back for the first 3 or 4 weeks of the year, guys, I know you know this. They have not won a game without Micah Parsons in Green Bay. Haven't won one single game. So what's that look like? Do they start the year 0-4 without him? Do they keep that streak going? I probably not. But I mean, again, those are questions you need to answer. And I think, to your point, Brandon, all the questions are on the defensive side of the ball. And so I think that's where the arrow points.
All the questions of the defensive side of the ball, Peter. What about the offensive line? How confident are we in that offensive line? Because for what it's worth, Rasheed Walker had absolutely no market in the NFL free agency. He goes to a 1 year, $10 million deal. We can dive into that maybe a little bit later in the surprise. I was certainly surprised, but I look at that offensive line, Peter, and I like it because you made the point. Guys are going to come in and they know what they are going to do, but we haven't seen Jordan Morgan at left tackle in the regular season. We haven't seen Sean Ryan for an entirety of the regular season at center. Aaron Banks has been underwhelming as a high dollar free agent signing from Brian Gutekunst. Is Zach Tom going to be healthy after the surgery he had? Is he going to be ready? I want to say yes. I want to be confident in the offensive line because I'm a hashtag Goody guy, but I have concerns because that was the demise of their season a year ago.
It was, and that was going to be my other answer is like, okay, I think we all think that there are some things that Anthony Belton can do that maybe no one else on this front can do physically, in terms of playing with power and playing with that tenacity. Sean Ryan is a nasty dude. Like, he is he will MF you in the trenches. And I think that's one of the things they really like about him. And Aaron Banks is that same sort of power guy. Like, that's 3 really big dudes in there. And then, we'll see on Jordan Morgan. I'm not going to say that I don't know that depth matters at offensive line, but I will say the Packers had, I think, the deepest offensive line in the league last year, and it just didn't matter at a certain point. Like, it's such a struggle because continuity is such an important thing that if you're constantly shuffling guys around, it doesn't matter. And if you look at the teams that made long runs last year, they had continuity at offensive line. And that's it. Like, if your offensive line stays healthy, you'll win a bunch of games. And if they don't, you probably won't. And that it really is as simple as that. And I don't want to reduce everything to luck, but like, if this five is good enough to be a Super Bowl offensive line, like, I think you could make the case pretty comfortably that this 5 is more talented than the Seahawks offensive line from last year. I mean, I don't think that's a crazy thing to say at all. I think Zach Tom is the best player on either line.
Yeah.
And so, like, you don't need to have a superstar offensive line. Offensive line is a weak link system. It's about how bad is your worst player. And if these 5 guys are out there, I don't know that there is a weak link, because I'll be the first one to raise my hand and say, I think I got Jordan Morgan wrong as he's a guard. Very clearly, he's not a guard. We'll see if he's a tackle, but he's not a guard. And so let's see what it looks like at left tackle. But the left tackle tape is good. Like, from the preseason into the regular season, when he was asked to play tackle left or right, it was good. And I think he can be a good player. If he's a good player this year, that is a market upgrade over what Rasheed Walker was last year, who was not. He was ungood. He was not a good player. And you just, like, you can't have your left tackle he wasn't a liability, but you can't have your left tackle be one of the places. He was a liability in the second half against Chicago for sure. But over the course of the season, he wasn't. And so I think it's not that I don't quite not care. It's just that I kind of don't think it matters that much. Like, Darian Kennard is an awesome piece for you to have to come in and play tackle in a pinch. If they could get a guard that you felt the same way about, or just an interior offensive lineman you felt the same way about, I would feel pretty good about this offensive line. And they're going to take a guy in the 4th round or the 5th round that is a tackle who is going to play probably center or guard for them. And he's going to be good, because that's just how this works with the Packers.
The offseason rolling on in Green Bay. Free agency already a week into it. And certainly the debate whether the Packers got better or worse will certainly roll on. But the bigger question you might want to ask yourself is, why did they approach free agency this way? We're going to dig into that, what it tells us about their overall plan ahead of 2026. Are they playing smart, or are they being way too conservative? We discuss next, coming up on the Locked On Packers Squad Show. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inboxes overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. They help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. The skills, the experience, the location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that sort of sums it all up. In the minute or so I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of the Locked On Packers Squad Show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support the show by saying you heard about it on the Locked On Packers Squad Show. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions do apply. If you need to hire, this sounds like a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Thank you for making Locked On Packers your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Gentlemen, the offseason it's interesting in Green Bay. Under Brian Gutekunst, it certainly has changed. It has fluctuated between being aggressive and maybe just filling spots here and there. Jacob, when you look at the offseason that the Green Bay Packers have had thus far, it's only a week into the new league year or so, free agency, a lot of moves, a lot of depth pieces, it feels like, for the Green Bay Packers. When you look at this roster, can you identify what the free agency, what this market has been telling you about the Packers' plans for 2026 and who they trust on their roster?
No, not really. I mean, like you look at like what they've wanted to do and how they've done it, and to me, I like what they've done, but like it feels to me like they like the guys that are in the room already, whether fans agree with that or not. That they do like the guys that are there, and they're adding competition. Like Goody will tell you every single time he talks to you in the offseason exactly what they're going to do. Like he doesn't really lie about stuff. Like the cornerback room, they asked, do you need to make wholesale changes? He said, no, we need to add competition. What have they done so far? They've added, Benjamin St. Juste, who is just that, competition. Might he end up
number
being
one
their
graded
best
player in zone coverage last year, according to
I was just going to say, like, might he end up being the Rasul Douglas of 2026, where you're looking back and saying, how was this guy available? Maybe. That'd be great. I don't know, though. But we'll see. I think you pointed something out earlier, Brandon, when you talked about like the special teams. Like that looks like that is something that they finally are saying, hey, we need to get better there. And we need to make changes on how we approach things and how we do stuff there. So I think potentially that could be what they're signaling, right? They're saying, hey, we like our offense, we like our defense, we're going to make some slight adjustments, but we do need to get better on special teams. We do need to actually allocate resources and roster spots to guys on the special teams that are going to make us, that are going to make that an advantageous part of the game for us, instead of just closing your eyes and hoping for the best like they've done the last however many years. So I think if you look at what they've done in free agency so far, and which is basically going to be what they have done, that is kind of what the tail would be as far as like what their plan is let's run it back with a lot of these guys, and then let's supplement and insulate some of these rooms along, the offense and defense.
Peter, do you think they are overvaluating some of their guys when it comes to, Jordan Morgan is a conversation? I guess you could look at edge. You brought up Barron Sorrell and Colin Oliver. Both of those guys have been unproven. They only played that really meaningful snaps in that season finale there in Minnesota. So are they overvaluing their own guys and putting a little bit too much trust, hope into their production or their potential production? Because I think all three of us would agree. I think most Packer fans that listen to the show would say the Super Bowl window was opened on August 28th of 2025, and now it's kind of go time. And I think Goody would also tell you that based on, going out of his comfort zone with Zaire Franklin, who's 30 years old, and Javon Hargrave, who's 33 years old, and stuff that we haven't seen him do in the last 3 years here in Green Bay as this young core has now kind of flourished together. But do you think there's a little bit of overvaluating, those guys that he has in Green Bay right now?
I think every team overvalues their own players because, and maybe they don't overvalue, but maybe they value the certainty of, we see this guy every day in practice. We know the person, we know in our system what he looks like. Anytime you add a free agent and you watch the tape and you go, okay, I think I know what he can do. There's some level of translation that you just don't know. Well, how is he going to adjust to being in Green Bay? How is he going to adjust to Matt LaFleur? How is he going to adjust to Jonathan Gannon? Those kinds of things are all factors that we just don't know. And to your, like the question you asked, Morley, about what is this signal about the Packers? As Jacob was talking, I went back and I looked up the 2021 offseason. That was the summer of discontent, you guys may recall. And that was Aaron Rodgers may or may not have wanted out, all those things. The guys that they signed in actual free agency, it's one player, Dennis Kelly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's it. Now they eventually trade for Randall Cobb because Aaron Rodgers threw a hissy fit. And they signed Devondre Campbell in like June. And they hit on Devondre Campbell. He ended up being an all-pro for them. But this is my point. Like, I think what this signals is the Packers think they're good enough. They think this team is good enough to win the Super Bowl right now. Last year, guess what? They didn't. Because, and you know how I know they didn't? They traded for Micah Parsons. You don't make that trade if you think you're good enough. You don't give up 2 first-round picks if you already think you're good enough. You add Micah Parsons because you think you need him. And the Packers just didn't think they needed to do anything crazy to this team. And guess what? I think they're right. Like, this team is good enough, but to the point we made earlier about the 2014, the 2020, and the 2021 team, they were good enough. They didn't win. You still have to go do the thing. And so we can talk about Did they upgrade with St. Juste from Hobbs? Did they upgrade with a full season of Sean Ryan from Elton Jenkins? Did they upgrade with maybe not? Here's what I know. This team is good enough to win the Super Bowl. They are as good as any team in the NFL, and they just have to go do it. I don't think we need to be sitting here waiting for them to go, okay, are they going to trade for Josh Sweat? Are they going to trade for Devon Achane? And we can talk about those things, and they're interesting, and maybe we should talk about them more, but like, they don't have to do that to be good enough to win the Super Bowl. It would be the cherry on top. It would be to a greater degree if they, did one of the things that I mentioned, but like let's go get Snacks Harrison. Let's go get Whitney Merciless. Like those were just add veteran depth and try and load up to win the title. Get Gary Payton on the Miami Heat. Like those are the kinds of moves that they need to make now, because this is supplementation. The core pieces of this roster are the core pieces. And I firmly believe the core pieces are good enough to win a Super Bowl. And so that's what this signals, is that Brian Gutekunst agrees. And of course he does. He put the team together, but I do think the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. And now you just have to go do it. And unfortunately, we have to wait 6 months to see them try.
I know both of you guys are getting into the draft. We're getting into the draft season. Certainly here coming up next after free agency kind of slows down, then it becomes draft season. Jacob, do you think, based on what we saw in free agency, I thought it was a win for a handful of different reasons, but the other reason I thought it was a win, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it, was because it doesn't corner you into having to draft a position where you absolutely have a need at, right? Like I think most of us would agree special teams got figured out. We can make the discussion about defensive line and linebacker. I still think both of those positions are upgrades. Certainly cornerback is a position you're going to want them to address via draft if they're not going to add another free agent. They obviously believe heavily in Keyshawn Nixon. I'm excited for St. Juste, especially in Jonathan Gannon's whatever system he decides to run whenever he decides to address the media. But do you think that the free agents
make him address the media
or whenever that's going to be? Do you think that this offseason, the way the Packers handled free agency kind of helps them when it comes time for the NFL draft, knowing whoever that best player is potentially available for them, they can take him and they're not backed into a corner and having to select a defensive lineman they may not feel as comfortable in that number 52 spot or 85 or wherever they're drafting?
Yeah, I mean, you look at what Goody has done basically the entire time he's been here, and he's tried to get this roster in a position that he doesn't need to do that, where he will supplement some of these positional groups. He will insulate these positional groups before the draft. So he's not necessarily doing that in the draft. And I think you look around the league, and I think that's the best way to do it, right? But it's also a lot harder to predict anything that's going to happen in the draft when you're picking 52, right? These teams, they go in, and I think a lot of fans would be very surprised at how well teams are and how much they know about intel on other teams and how this thing's going to play out. With that said, that's typically in the first round, where these guys know, like, hey, I know team X likes player Y. I know this is going to happen. One of these three things is going to happen, and these four players are very likely going to be available. At least one of them will be to us. I don't know what that looks like with pick 52. I really don't. I think that's nearly impossible to do. So they are really in a position where you look at them and say, hey, the things that we've all been talking about, cornerback, defensive line, maybe an offensive line. So of course they're going to take a wide receiver, right? That's probably what they'll do. But they do set themselves up well that they don't have to do that. Like they really can. And if they do that, if they go out and they just pick a position that none of us are expecting, it's because they've done their due diligence on the roster beforehand, where they're not just looking at next year. And Brian Gutekunst has basically said that on record. Like, I'm not looking at next year. I'm looking at years next year, the year after that, the year after that, and the year after that. Like, how is this going to play out in the long run? And you have to think of that way as a GM. So I think, yeah, they have not put themselves in a corner where they have to do anything on draft day. And so I think that's where you want to be, because then you really can. It's not just lip service saying we took the best player available. We took the guy that we liked the most, because if you would put truth serum in a lot of these GMs, they would love to say that we took the best player available. But there are times where, like, man, we don't have anyone that can play this position on the roster right now. We've got to take this guy, even though we like player, Y better. So I think the Packers do a really good job of that. And I think that'll make the draft really interesting on how things play out for them. And so, yeah, so I think they have not painted themselves in a corner. And I think they can kind of take whoever they want.
The Packers love to pay lip service to that idea that, hey, we take the best player available. But isn't it amazing how often the best player available seems to line up exactly with a need that they have either this year or the next year? Like it is one of those things
Cooper
where
DeJean, by the way.
Well, okay. And the thing about it is usually they have these guys tiered. So like this is common in like a fantasy football draft, for example. You have tiers of players and the grades are there. And so your needs have to matter. Like it has to matter what your roster is. And the thing that I have always said on Locked On Packers and on socials is it's not best player available like the highest graded player, or you might take a guard at number 2 overall when that would just be lunacy. Like Caleb Downs is a great example of this year. The number 1 offensive lineman in this draft is a guard. And those guys are not going to go in the top 10 or at least the top 5. And it's about the player who most impacts your roster over the life of their rookie contract. That's the best player available for you. And so I think we do have to remember that piece of it. So it's like, okay, what kind of impact is this player going to make given the roster, given what's going to happen next year, given free agents, given the way that this roster looks, given who's going to get extensions, those sorts of things. Brandon, I'm going to throw this at you. And Morley would love your answer too. What is the craziest position they could draft at 52 where the fans would freak out, but you would go, oh yeah, that makes sense?
Right now, running back. Because
Lloyd?
I mean, we're going to talk about some of the rumors, but Marshawn Lloyd, I want to believe in him. I know the Packers want to believe in him. I know they sent him down to Madison to figure out those hamstrings. We've seen a little bit of it in preseason games. I know it doesn't matter to anybody.
That is tantalizing, isn't it?
We saw a little bit of it. Like the potential is there, but after Josh Jacobs, you let Emmanuel Wilson go. Chris Brooks is brought back. We know what Chris Brooks can do. We know his strengths. We know what he's able to do. But I think you need a little bit more sizzle behind Josh Jacobs. So 52 at running back would be one of those moves where I could be like, especially with the A.J. Dillon when fans hated that, pick in the second round. Don't love it, but like I could see it.
Especially at Mike Washington Jr., like the freak of all freaks at running back. They drafted a similar 9.97 RAS guy in A.J. Dillon, and he was not that explosive, but Mike Washington is. Like he's a 4.3 guy. And I would say he looks more like a 4.4 guy on tape. Morley, to correct me if you think it's something different. But like that to me would make sense. But that's just
Christine Michael 2.0. Is that what you're talking about? I don't know. We don't need to get into that. But no, I think running. I was going to say running back too, Brandon, because you look at Matt LaFleur and you brought up A.J. Dillon, who was a premium draft pick, but they've given a contract to Aaron Jones. They've given a big time contract to Josh Jacobs. It is a position they value. Mm-hmm. And so could it be something where they do draft a guy high? Could it be something where they give up draft compensation to bring someone like Devin Achane in? I don't know. Where that could be a thing. The other position, and I know this has been talked about a bunch, is wide receiver.
Yep.
Where would it be crazy?
You joked, but I was like, it would not surprise me at all if they took a receiver at 52.
Especially if there's a guy like Chris Brazzell is there from Tennessee who checks a lot of boxes for them. This is a Ted Thompson-ism to a T, where Ted took a wide receiver in the second round like 4 years in a row. People were like, okay, Ted, okay, like we get it. You like wide receivers. But that's kind of what they do. But not only that, they've got 2 guys under contract next year. And so, it's going to signal a lot of like what they think about that room and who they're going to bring back and if they want to bring anyone back. But that would be another one. But the 2 positions I think a lot of people would be mad about is running back and wide receiver that are potentially on the table. The other one is I'm not going to say it. Never mind. I'm not going to say tight end because punter because I think they've got Tucker Kraft and they believe in him, but they don't.
And they brought back Josh Wiley as well.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this on Monday. I think edge is also a sneaky one where like if Zion Young from Missouri is there at 52, that they just go, why not? Like
kid.
He's the Penn State kid. Danny Sutton-Smith, is that his name?
Yep. And another guy is the Illinois kid, Jackas, Jacas.
Oh yeah. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. We got to get Jason on the pronunciation for that one. Okay. But like that do you just want like a 1-for-1 Kingsley Enagbare replacement that's also Lucas Van Ness insurance, that's also a little bit of Micah Parsons insurance? Premium position, like they value premium positions in the first round, and they don't have a first round pick. So do they treat 52 like it's a first round pick? Do they want the premium athleticism, the S tier athlete, and the premium position? Would not surprise me at all if that was the direction they would go in. That's not one that would get the fans freaked out, I don't think, at all. Like, you can never have too much pass rush. It's not the same as drafting Rashawn Gary 12th after you pay Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith the combined GDP of a small nation. But it would be one of those like, whoa, okay, I guess, like, let's go. It is interesting though, Jacob. You look at that Eagles team in 2022, we think of them as having this like crazy defensive line, the pass rush, and they almost set the NFL record. They set a new Eagles record for sacks. Their edge rushers were just okay. It was their interior that really got after people. And I know Hassan Reddick was really good, but like after that, it was Derek Barnett. It was late stage Brandon Graham. And I think Brandon Graham was hurt for a lot of that year too. So they didn't need that super elite guy. Reddick would be a guy though that would be interesting to me. Like with that, yeah, he just turned 30, gonna be 31, I think, this year. Undersized, but like the best year of his career was in Philly for Jonathan Gannon. $5 million, $6 million, $7 million bucks to get someone like that. Doesn't really hurt your comp picks. That would be interesting to me.
And you just said like 5 things that I think we could go 6 hours on this podcast. Like if we want to go down that, that road where it's like, okay, well, hey, if they don't get an interior defensive line that can rush the passer early, like, do they just punt until day 3,
and take their TJ Slayton in round 5?
But I think the thing that fans want is a corner, right? That's going to be, if it's not a cornerback, I think there's going to be a lot of fans that are going to say, what are we doing? And luckily, I'll say this, luckily for those fans, like you look at the way this draft is built, the spine of this draft, there's a lot of corners.
Day 2 is the day to get them too, I think.
And I think it was you, Peter, that tweeted this today, and you're spot on. The top guys in this draft are not really guys that Green Bay necessarily would like. It really is the day 2 guys, the big physical, can run, play zone defense. Like those are the guys that are going to be there at pick 52. And so when you talk about best player available, this really might be a year where that does align with the need, and they can say, hey, Chris Johnson was the best player available. The kid from Ohio State was the best player available. Brandon, how do you say the South Carolina kid's name? Cece? Like best player available. Like, so I could see a lot of that going down and a lot of that happening. And I think that's what would make fans very happy, is to see a guy like that.
I think more likely, and the way that Brian Gutekunst usually surprises us, is not so much the position, but the player. So like Eric Stokes was like a half round sooner than we thought he was going to get taken. Quay Walker, maybe a round or 2 sooner than it seemed like he was going to be taken. So like, it would not surprise me if we're sitting there at 51.
It's going to be the Everett kid out of Georgia. That's who.
Well, I was going to say the Ohio State kid, Davison Igbinosun, just because I think tall, physical, and can play man coverage. I think in this defense, you need some guys that play with all the man match that I think they're going to play. I think it'd be nice to have a guy who could man up
but only if Chris Johnson's on the board. Only if whoever the Packers fans want the most is on the board does he do stuff like that. And sometimes it works out. Other times it's been bad.
Yeah. The Packers are not, they don't care as much about arm length as some teams at offensive line or at corner. Like I put this out on X. In fact, earlier today, as we record this, Casey Hayward is basically the smallest, shortest levered corner they've drafted basically since Ron Wolf took over, and in the top 100, and he was 5'11", 190 with 30-inch arms. So someone like Brandon Cisse just measured in 5'11" and change, 189. I joked he's a Cop's cheeseburger away from being 190, and he had almost 31-inch arms. So it'd be pretty similar. But like someone like Keith Abney from Arizona State, who's a day 2 corner, slot corner. Keontae Scott from Miami, slot corner. Like, I don't think they're going to do that. And so it's going to very much be about types. But there's Will Lee is a guy that I think Green Bay could be interested in from Texas A&M. Devin Moore from Florida, who's like almost 6'3", over 200 pounds and can run. Day 2 is the place for this cornerback class to me. Day 2 is always my favorite day of the draft. My favorite players are inevitably on day 2 generally, and that's where the Packers have for years absolutely crushed the draft.
Well, and this will be the last thing I say about this, but Goody has also traditionally attacked strengths of drafts. And so it wouldn't shock me in the slightest if their first 2 picks were a corner, just because that is going to, it could very well be
Around
like
Wolf draft.
Picks 2, round 2 and round 3, the best player available really is a corner that fits what they like. And so if they do that, I mean, I think, and also I ask you guys, do you think fans would be happy about that if they just went corner picks 2 and 3?
Unequivocally, yes.
I do. I think they would be, as they should be, because
I think that's the only position where they could do that and fans would go, we get it.
Yeah.
And remember, he did that in 2018. He went Jair Alexander, Josh Jackson back to back, and it looked like he had fundamentally changed the secondary. And it turned out Josh Jackson was terrible. But I still
that was everybody's favorite pick too out of the two.
I need a 30 for 30 on what happened with Josh Jackson, because I loved the tape. He still had a relative athletic score over 9. Like the
preseason Josh Jackson too. Do you remember the preseason? Like he was
unbelievable.
I don't know.
He might have just been to borrow not to step on Brandon's toes, but he might just be a 4A hitter. He might have just been a guy who looked really good in the preseason, was really good, beating up on the Wisconsin quarterbacks of the college football world, and couldn't hack it in the NFL. But he wasn't just bad. He was like out of the NFL in 4 years bad. That's the thing. And I just that is still one of those, like, to this day, that one haunts me. Like, what did everyone miss? Everyone missed. He was a top 20 player on the consensus board.
Yeah, we were shocked. We were shocked that he went in the second round.
It was crazy.
I still remember it.
And it turns out the league was right.
Yeah. Roster building season underway. Goody can still address a lot of these needs via free agency. Obviously the NFL draft, as the guys were just sitting there chatting about. But is there a move that they could possibly make with an old friend? We'll break down that coming up next on the Locked On Packers Squad Show. Today's show is brought to you by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood Prediction Markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long using your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood Prediction Markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when the momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You are no longer just a spectator. Play-by-play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the United States. Download the Robinhood app now today to begin. Thank you for making Locked On Packers your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. We broke down, gentlemen, the free agent market for the Green Bay Packers 1 week into the new league year. We discussed who the Packers added, who they've lost. We discussed what the potential could be for the draft based on who they signed in free agency. And I opened up social media today. And as I'm scrolling social media, I kept seeing Jayden Reed trending on social media. So I clicked on the Jayden Reed trending and wanted to figure out exactly what it is. The Packers obviously losing Romeo Doubs this year via free agency. He goes to New England. The Packers obviously drafted Matthew Golden in round 1 last year. But there is now the rumor, at least social media rumor, Peter, that Jayden Reed for, I don't know, let's say old friend John Eric Sullivan down there in Miami, who is having a fire sale this offseason, just shipped out Jalen Waddle to Denver for a first-round draft pick, is potentially on the discussion for what the Packers could do for the backup running back position, or at least the next running back position behind Josh Jacobs, Devon Achane being a name brought up for Jayden Reed. So I'm just going to bring the social media trending to the Locked On Packers Squad Show, Peter, and ask you, would you trade Jayden Reed for Devon Achane out of Miami? And if you did, what would that trade package look like?
It would make your head spin how fast I would do that trade. and not because I don't think Jayden Reed is a good player. I do. I really like Jayden Reed. And I thought at the beginning of 2024, when he was playing with Malik Willis, I was like, this could be a #1 receiver. Like, legitimately could be a #1 receiver. And he hasn't been healthy enough, and he hasn't been consistent enough. I just think the bones of that deal makes so much sense for both teams, because what Jayden Reed can do is he can create explosives for you from any part of the field. Give him a jet sweep, throw him a receiver screen, throw him a little underneath route. He can take it for 60 yards, and he can win vertically. Well, what the Miami Dolphins desperately need is anyone who can catch the ball from Malik Willis. Anyone. Like, take a look at their depth chart. It is an AAF roster right now at receiver. It is sad. If they want to be just a baseline NFL offense, they need a baseline NFL receiver. And let's just say John Eric Sullivan, loved Jaden Reed in the draft. Dontavian Wicks would be the same sort of premise. Like, I think I would do the deal for Wicks too. But what the Packers desperately need is a electric playmaker in the backfield. And I think Devon Achane would give you a lot of the, let's just spit the ball out to this guy and let him go make a play. And how many times have we seen Matt LaFleur design an offense that can create explosive runs? And how many times has Josh Jacobs broken into the open field and a linebacker has caught his heels? Like, he's just not an explosive guy. He is, you said it before, they need to add some sizzle to this offense. He's the steak. Josh Jacobs is the steak. They need the sizzle.
I was waiting for it.
And that's what Devon Achane can be for this team. And I know you don't pay running backs in the NFL, but I'm glad Morley pointed out, you know who pays running backs? The Packers. They gave Aaron Jones an extension. They were going to re-extend him now for like pennies on the dollar, but they were trying to do that. And they paid Josh Jacobs a premium in free agency to come be the engine of this football team. They used a top 100 pick on 2 running backs just since Brian Gutekunst has taken over this front office. So they value that position. I think he would create so much explosiveness. Like, imagine an offense, guys. Imagine the speed that an offense with Achane, Watson, and Golden on the field together could give you. That is sicko stuff. That is just like, that is hot, dirty, nasty American speed. And I would be here for it.
I guess, Jacob, I want to get your thoughts. I guess I'm just unsure of the trade. In theory, I like it, Peter, but then I feel like that position is very thin all of a sudden. It goes from a strength to a little bit of a, I wouldn't say concern, because you
draft Chris Brazel at 52 and then you go.
Yeah. If that falls, yes. if that falls into the way, Jacob, your thoughts. Cause I feel like that position, the wide receiver position for the Packers, and keep in mind, like, Alec Pierce set that, the new standard for that extension that is going to come into effect when it comes to Christian Watson. If I'm Watson's agent, that's the first thing I'm bringing up in contract negotiations.
He might get $30 million a year.
Correct. So like that's also going to be another conversation for another day. But I feel like, Jacob, that position all of a sudden, let's say hypothetically, both players need contracts. They're entering their final year, Jaden Reed, Devon Achane. So it does make sense to Peter's point. I do agree, but I'm a little worried about what that receiver position would look like. Obviously, Christian Watson's injury concerns, and I hate saying that out loud because I love him, and I think he's gotten past it, and the ACL was a freak injury, but that's just what it is. Matthew Golden is a little bit unproven, and Dontavian Wicks, as much as I love him, also having a little bit of some injury issues as well. Like, I automatically feel a little bit concerned if that were to happen for the Green Bay Packers at that receiver position, as much as I would love Achane in the backfield.
And I think that's why my first question in the teaser was, how many wide receivers do they need? And in the past, it's been 6, 7. Like, they've had so many, and that's not really that normal, or
that's fair.
We talked about also and Peter brought up the guys with clear direction. Like, this is your role on the team. Would that almost, kind of break up the logjam at the wide receiver position too? Where if it's Reed or Wicks, where then all of a sudden you're saying, okay, well, Watson and Golden are a clear-cut 1 and 2, and that's a really good 1 and 2 if those guys are who you think they are, and that's going to be up to the Packers. And truth be told, I trust the Packers on wide receiver. If there's a couple positions, that like they've been good at it, and so if they think that's good enough, then I agree with them. But it would come down to, like, what is the trade for Achane look like, and is it going to be, Reed and stuff for Achane? Is it going to be Achane and stuff for Reed? I think that's fascinating, because if you ask me here right now today, who's the better player? Healthy Jaden Reed to me is a better player. And that's, I like him, but that's because I like him a lot. That's because I think in this offense, there is not necessarily, he's kind of been a weird fit. Like, and think about this. In Green Bay, you're a top 50 draft pick. You are good. You show up from day one, are a good player, a good teammate, do everything the right way, and you produce on the field. And we're talking about you not getting a second contract. Why? That's weird. that's not a normal thing. And the answer for that with Reed is just, he's not really like the type of receiver they typically want on the field all the time because, he doesn't really play on the outside. He's not a great blocker. And you go to 2 wide receiver sets now that Tucker Kraft has come into, the picture as an all-pro-ish type tight end. That kind of devalues Jayden Reed a little bit as well.
Fair. Yeah.
And so it's, you're looking for a different spot for him.
And Tucker Kraft gets the ball in a lot of the parts of the field you'd like to get Jayden Reed the ball.
Absolutely. And so you look at Jayden Reed then, and it's like, well, man, he might be better served to be playing for another team anyways. And you know who would know that more than anyone? John Eric Sullivan, Jeff Hafley, guys that have been around. So Malik Willis, like Malik Willis might be pounding the damn table to go get Jayden Reed because that's his guy, and so it makes a lot of sense.
Throw the game clincher to against Jacksonville when he had to come in for Jordan Love.
Yeah,
Jayden Reed. Yep, that's because Jayden Reed is the type of wide receiver that makes your life easier as a quarterback. He's going to be in the middle of the field. You can take a 5-yard, whatever type of route he's running, he's going to catch it and turn it into a 20-yard explosive. Like, that is who he is. And Green Bay just probably thinks they have that guy in Matthew Golden that can also do that.
That's the other part of this, Jacob, is like you noticed who was in the slot when Jayden Reed was out, and it was a lot of Matthew Golden.
Yeah.
And they like to play Christian Watson in the slot as a power slot. And they like to go but as you were talking, I was daydreaming about Devon Achane in the Tyler Ervin role. Like, obviously he would do more for your offense, but just imagine him in motion and the kind of peril you put defenses in. If you had him on the field in 21 with Josh Jacobs in the backfield, Achane in the slot, and Golden and Watson on the field together, it would be a nightmare to defend. And here's the other part that I think is important. Derrick Henry is the 3rd highest paid running back in the NFL. He averages $15 million a year. Just off the top of your head, how many receivers make $15 million a year? 28.
Over 20. I was going to say over 25. Okay.
Cooper Kupp makes $15 million a year. Like, that's how far down the list you have to go. And so if you have to pay Devon Achane $15 million, who, and Jayden Reed, I think, can probably get more than that, don't you? Like, don't you think you could get the Romeo Doubs contract in free agency for the right team?
I think that's a good question too. So, like, when you talk about trade compensation, if they were both free agents right now, who would get a bigger contract, Achane or Reed?
I think Jayden Reed.
Easily.
I do
easily
too.
Reed. Yeah.
So this is why, if you're the Packers and you could just do a straight up player for player, I think it makes sense. I really do. I think for both teams, and I know that fans love to do the thing where they're like, hey, we'll give you this bad player and you give us your good player. I don't think this is that at all. And I know Jayden Reed had some things to say to certain people on Twitter. And I wish Jayden, dude, I really genuinely think Jayden Reed's an awesome guy. Mm-hmm. I wish he'd just stand on it. And I'm sure the Packers are saying, hey, delete those tweets. But he will like some tweets and retweet or quote tweet some tweets and then delete them. And I'm just like, man, just stand on business. I would really like, that's the receiver thing to do, is to stand on the business and just be like, look, don't talk about me like that. I'm a really good player, because he is. But that's why I think this makes sense, is you're giving a really good player to a team that desperately needs anybody to play receiver.
Well, both teams benefit, right?
And right. Miami could extend him.
Yeah.
Like, if you're Miami, you don't have anybody to pay. You want to have baseline competency on offense this year. I just think it makes a ton of sense for both teams. And I understand all of a sudden it gets thin really quick at receiver, right? But that's why I think already they're going to draft a receiver with one of their first 3 picks. I would actually be shocked if they don't draft a receiver in the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th rounds of this draft. I would be shocked, because this is just what they do. Like, 2 guys are under contract next spring. This time next year, 2 guys are under contract. We think Christian Watson's going to be the 3rd. You can't field an NFL team with 3 receivers. So if they're going to draft someone anyway, then I think that you're hurting your depth this year, but you're doing it in exchange for, I think you can make the case, the most explosive playmaker at the position in the NFL. I really think you can make that case for Devon Achane.
I'm going to put you guys. Go ahead, Jacob.
I was going to say, the wide receiver position in Matt LaFleur's offense, it's like, you want guys that are game breakers, and you have those guys, but you don't need 6 of them. Like, you really don't. And if you've got Watson, if you've got Golden, and they clearly love Savion Williams. Like, I didn't, but like, again, I just said it earlier. Like, if the Packers like someone at wide receiver, I'm going to defer to them. And so it really matters. Like, it really depends if this hypothetical trade goes down. Like, that's going to be what matters, is what do the Packers think of Savion Williams and Dontavian Wicks as your wide receivers 3 and 4 in whatever order? Because a group of Matthew Golden, Christian Watson, Savion Williams, Dontavian Wicks, Bo Melton, that's not a terrible group. It really isn't. And especially those guys that are more bottom of the roster. Like, we've seen Bo Melton go out and make plays in Matt LaFleur's offense. Like, he's been a good player for them. Yeah. And I know fans maybe want more, but guys, he's like the 5th, 6th wide receiver, and he's catching bombs against Chicago, So he's a fine NFL player, and I think they can win a lot of games with that group, and probably more if they've got that guy. And the last thing I'll say about it is there's a reason they drafted Marshawn Lloyd. There's a reason there were rumors at the trade deadline. This is not the first time we've heard about Achane. And where there's smoke, there's fire. And there's two guys.
This is also not the first time we've talked about Jaden Reed potentially being on the block, because this happened last offseason. They put feelers out to see what the situation was. And that's when he changed agents, and he had Drew Rosenhaus go talk to the Packers and say, what's the deal here?
That's a good point. Yep.
So like, we just have to remember, this is something the Packers do all the time too. Morley has pointed this out. I know that I've pointed this out on the show. Like, they signed Zadarius Smith after trying to trade for him twice. Like, when they like a player, and they eventually will do, if they have the opportunity to get that player, they will circle back. Like, they're not just like, oh, you know, we couldn't get you, so we're going to let it leave. Like, no, they're going to go and try and get that guy. And I really would not be surprised, especially like, I remember when did Jordan Rodriguez do the Playmakers series? Was that 2 seasons ago, before the 2024 season? I think it was. And Matt LaFleur said in that interview, she asked him, who do you watch? And he said the 49ers and the Dolphins. And that was Achane's breakout season. So it's like, okay, if he's already watching the Mike McDaniel tape and seeing Achane be a menace, like, is that something where he's like, hey, you know what would be cool? Devon Achane.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun offseason potentially for the Green Bay Packers. We'll see what they do. Still a lot of free agency left. Obviously, the NFL draft. And, of course, as you guys have talked about, the trade market certainly there for the Green Bay Packers. We'll see what they do as we'll break it down all offseason long, but that'll do it for our squad show tonight. Before we get out of here, a quick friendly reminder, the Locked On Packers squad show and the Daily Show with our guy Peter over there, free and available wherever you guys get podcasts. Of course, we are also available on YouTube, free and available on YouTube as well. If you're watching, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up, hit that notification bell. Always get notified when we go live on the Locked On Packers YouTube channel. For Peter, for Jacob, for myself, we will sign off for now. We'll be back on Thursday night breaking down more Packers offseason football. We'll start diving in to more of the draft as well as these days go on. Thanks to each and every one of you guys for tuning in. Thank you for making Locked On Packers part of your day each and every single day. And as always, make sure you always stay Locked On Packers.